Addition Financial Arena was buzzing with excitement in early May. The Orlando Valkyries were playing their second-to-last home match of the season against the San Diego Mojo. Now, you may ask, who are the Valkyries and the Mojo? They happen to be two of the teams in the Pro Volleyball Federation. 2024 was the league's inaugural season, and it was obvious why people were digging the atmosphere. I mean, they've got a drum corps to get people revved up. They've got giveaways and stand-up dining along the baseline, right next to the court. Preteen volleyball players Layton and Reese were sitting courtside with their teammates, enjoying the match.
I just like that they're a home team. I like that it's like a team effort.
The volleyball was impressive, too.
I think that a lot of viewers watch one match and they're hooked.
This is former Valkyries outside hitter Gillen.
Typically, the women's version is the version that you would rather watch because of the strategy. And so just to give this platform to women and give us the same opportunity means a lot.
I think it's huge that the little girls can watch.
Orlando coach Pauly.
It's just more motivation for them to train hard, love the sport, want to play in college, and now there's a little bit of a path afterwards that they can continue to play the sport that they love.
Loving volleyball perfectly describes middle blocker Maddie McLaughlin.
Honestly, since the time I was like 6 years old, it's all I've ever wanted to do was to play sports at the highest level possible.
But not that long ago, Maddie's dream of playing professional volleyball or even playing college volleyball at Arizona State University didn't seem possible.
What if I'm sick forever? What if I never get to play sports again? What if I have to give up on my childhood dream of being a professional athlete?
Welcome to BYU Radio's Big Stories, telling the amazing and inspiring tales from the Big 12 and beyond. I'm your host, Cleon Wall. Our episode, Maddie McLaughlin Will Motivate You. Maddie cheered her Valkyrie teammates from the sideline in the match against the Mojo. She was not dressed to play, but intently watched the game and shouted words of encouragement. Orlando lost, but it didn't dampen the spirits of the young autograph seekers asking Maddie and others for their signature. Other fans wanted pictures with Maddie and teammate Carly Graham. Few probably knew of Maddie's struggle to become a pro volleyball player or the self-motivation she needed to stand on that court. Maddie's parents, Mary and Peter McLaughlin, saw that determination early in her life.
She was so calm and so sweet, and she just was easy. Then, she figured things out and her will force kicked in and she wasn't quite as easy.
It was like she came out of the womb an athlete. And somebody that was just adventurous. There were times when we would be in the backyard and she would just start walking in a certain direction. And we'd be like, Maddie, come back here. And you'd have to run after her to get her to stop. And then you'd carry her back, put her down, and then she'd just start off again, just marching like in a straight line.
I didn't understand that my childhood was maybe different than the norm. My parents were very clear that there wouldn't be any screens in our house. And most of my childhood was spent outdoors. And so my parents would just push us out in the morning and, we would complain, of course. And then as soon as we were out there, we would just be coming up with games or just, hanging out with our neighbors or whatever it was. And we'd be out pretty much all day and then they'd call us in for dinner. And of course we complained again for that too. But yeah, so my childhood was very active, outdoors, like 90% of the time. There was a beehive that was in our shed. And so my older brother had this genius idea to make like a DIY bee suit for me. Unfortunately, his idea was to put a colander, like a strainer for monsters, and put it on my head and use packing tape to seal it. And unfortunately, he taped it straight to my hair without realizing it. And so I had bald chunks after that. It was a rough moment. But it was that kind of stuff. We were always up to just random creative machinations of all sorts. As I've gotten older, I have gained such an appreciation for how my parents raised us, especially without screens, because I think we learned how to interact socially with each other, and with our neighbors.
I'm a proud papa because I love the way that she can interact and get along with anybody.
When she was about 7, a friend of ours from the school said, hey, there's a foot race over at this park if your kids are interested. And Maddie was the only one that was interested. And she had no experience with organized sports, none. And the kids all lined up, and it was boys and girls, and there were maybe 75 kids in a big green field. And I moved down towards the finish line with all the other parents, and we were standing around waiting. And then the gun went off, and the pack just took off. And I'm watching. I'm like, oh, there's this, this boy out. Boy, he's really outstripping everybody. And it was like, that's Maddie. She had really short hair at the time. She looked like she was standing still. She was so calm and so relaxed, and she won. And I remember coming up to her afterwards and saying, you won. And she was like, yeah, I did. Like, it was like, well, of course, Mom, I decided I wanted to run faster than them, so that's what I did. She had an ability to pick up kind of anything, any sport, and be pretty, actually, I'm gonna say really good. She had a drive and an interest and a delight. Like, playing any sport, it didn't matter what it was. She was absolutely over the moon to do it.
We would do soccer and then basketball and track. And then I also did softball and swimming, just a whole sports sampler.
But one sport she didn't take to was volleyball.
There was this sort of startup league that was going on, and they had practices at my middle school. And so I showed up one day, and they needed extra bodies, and so I was like, all right, why not? But I couldn't stand the sport. I was terrible at it. I had absolutely no affinity for it, and I was not having fun.
She's like, volleyball seems like a stupid sport.
I just thought it was the dumbest sport I'd ever encountered.
It's amazing how one decision can change the trajectory of someone's life. Maddie's best friend was a volleyball player as the two were entering their freshman year of high school.
And I'd heard rumors about the soccer team at my high school that they weren't the best of girls. And so I thought, okay, you know what? I'll just do volleyball. Why not? And that's when I actually started to take it seriously, and I got a little bit better, and I was like, okay, all right, maybe I don't hate this sport. I tried out for JV, made JV, and then got called up to varsity.
After volleyball season, Maddie dove right into basketball. And it wasn't too surprising when she got sick.
There was a nasty case of pertussis, whooping cough, going around my basketball team at that time. And so it just started out with a cough, which we thought was fairly benign. And so I missed a couple days because I was just coughing so violently. But we didn't really think much of it. We thought, okay, this will pass. I'll go back to school. From there, it just was like I became weaker and weaker and weaker and more physically incapacitated.
Her brothers went back in January and she stayed home. And I kept thinking, oh, well, this is temporary. She'll kick it. But we couldn't figure out what it was.
I started developing a bunch of seemingly random symptoms. And so it quickly became clear that it went beyond the scope of pertussis. And so I went to all sorts of specialists and doctors, and we kept waiting for me to turn the corner and get better, but it just didn't happen. And as time went on, I just got increasingly worse and worse.
I can't even tell you how many doctors we went to, how many people we enlisted to try to diagnose this. And we just kept coming up empty.
At the worst, I would wake up, and the best way I can explain this to people is imagine running a suicide sprint. Most athletes or even non-athletes can relate to that. You down and back, down and back, down and back. You come back and you're just, everything is on fire, basically. Your lungs are screaming at you. You can kind of hear your heartbeat in your ears, right? Like it's pounding in your head, and you're exhausted and you just want to lie down. That was the feeling that I would go to sleep with, and then that was the feeling that I would wake up with too. It was weird because my brain was fine, cognitively I was perfectly healthy, but physically I couldn't do anything.
Maddie found solace in humor.
Laughter is the best medicine. I 100% subscribe to that philosophy. So I would just be lying in bed and I just found Ellen DeGeneres and all the Jimmys, the late night talk shows, and even just stand-up comedy because I wanted to laugh. There wasn't a whole lot of joy in my life at that point.
A friend also provided a social lifeline at the end of the school year.
She came over, I remember, with her mom and brought me a yearbook after the end of that freshman year. And she had people sign it for me. And so she came over and brought me that. And then, I sent her an email thanking her for that. And that just set off 765 emails or something. And so yeah, she was fantastic.
But the mysterious illness lasted from one school year into the next.
And by that time, the district was no longer providing a tutor. They only provided it for her first year. So her sophomore year, she did a homeschooling cooperative. She lost a ton of weight. She got super, super skinny. That was a little scary.
She became more and more bereft, that she couldn't be with her friends at school and that she wasn't able to play sports.
She was really disappearing in a way into herself. She was pretty lonely, I would say. She had lost touch with a lot of people from high school.
Being in pain 24/7 was inordinately challenging, but then at a certain point, I think the mental health part of it became more of a struggle for me. We had the East Aurora Advertiser, this newspaper that would show up every Thursday, and it always had a sports section and pictures of all the sports team doing, whatever they were up to. And it got to the point where I couldn't even look at those pictures, I couldn't even. It was like I was sidelined, but I couldn't even be on the sidelines. I wasn't even able to go to the games or to kind of be there in spirit. It felt like I was just so distanced from everything, which was wildly isolating. I treasure human connection and being around people. I love it. And so to not have that all of a sudden and to feel like my friends were kind of one by one just slipping away was really, really hard. I never got to the point of thinking, wow, I should see a therapist. I resisted it. I avoided it like the plague. And I honestly didn't even realize that I was depressed. And so it wasn't until my parents sat me down and said, you have to see a therapist. And I still put up a massive fight. And I think I'd just fallen into that trap of like, oh, I don't need that. I'm sure that's great for other people, but personally, I have no need. But they just said, well, tough luck, you're a minor, so here we go. And so they got me going with that. And I think it's why I'm here now. Like I almost don't even have the words to express what that did for me.
It was so demoralizing. There is a feeling of helplessness that comes in. And in my private moments, I was feeling like, is this it? Maybe this is the one that I can't do anything for. Maybe this is just going to be the way she is for the rest of her life.
After almost 2 years of fighting to function on a daily basis, Maddie finally received a diagnosis: Lyme disease.
But first we went full Western medical approach. And so that was just carpet bombing myself with antibiotics, basically. So we did that, and I ended up with a gallbladder attack because I think we may have overdone it a little bit.
But words of wisdom from Maddie's therapist kept her going.
I was handing over a lot of my power to doctors, saying, okay, I need you to fix me, give me the silver bullet. And so she helped me to realize that I had a lot more say in my own health journey than I think I had realized at that point.
And the switch was, I'm going to have to heal myself. In retrospect, she and I both think that was one of the most helpful therapies of everything that she did.
The McLaughlins tried alternative remedies. Mom and daughter drove across the Canadian border from their New York home to receive vitamin C infusions and ozone treatments.
There was a moment when Maddie was sitting in the lounge, she having an IV, and I would either sit with her or I'd be in the waiting room, and I came in and it was finally empty and she was in there by herself, and she said, there are some people here. There was one girl in particular who had had Lyme for like 13 years or something. And she said, I can't let that happen to me because I don't want this illness to define me. I don't want to be the sick one.
There were moments when I felt like I literally cannot live like this. It's really hard for me to kind of put this into words, but it felt like I have to overcome this. I have to beat this, because I was miserable every day, in pain, mentally, physically, emotionally, and it felt like that can't be my future. I can't keep doing this for decades.
And that felt like a turning point in a sense.
At that point, we went full alternative, and I went on this really intense detoxification diet.
It was fruit and vegetables, cooked or non, but mainly non. And then that's it. That's it. No nuts, no seeds, no beans, no dairy, no sugar, no meat, no oils, nothing. Just fruits and vegetables. And I had to bring in a cooler, to just pack it full of fruits and vegetables because we had to have so much on hand. And she did that for 6 months without cheating, without doing anything else. And I would say within a month, we could tell the difference. She could tell the difference. All of a sudden, she could do a push-up. All of a sudden, she could walk beyond the mailbox. You know, something was coming back. Energy was coming back.
Toward the end of that 6-month period, it was the summer, and we went to Cape Cod. And I remember being astonished because she was riding a bike alongside me, and she was going just as fast as I was going. And I was like, Maddie! And she had this huge smile on her face. And then maybe the next day we went kayaking, and she was paddling her own boat. And this sounds like nothing, especially for a pro athlete, but for Maddie at that point, this was unbelievable.
But the miracles didn't end there.
I had always wanted to return to sports. The summer before my senior year, I sent an email to the head volleyball coach and said, hey, I don't know if you remember me, but here I am.
Coming up next on Big Stories, Maddie makes her sports comeback. Hey everyone, Cleon Wall here again. I'm inviting you to check out another BYU radio podcast. It's called Deep Blue. It's where you get the true stories of BYU athletes and coaches from their own mouths. It's hosted by my colleague, Jason Shepard. Last season, they had great interviews on Deep Blue, including Cougar quarterback Gary Bohannon. He teared up quite a bit talking about his son and what it means for his boy to watch his dad play. Also, BYU swimmer Jordan Tiffany, who quit swimming due to mental health struggles. He talked about how he was able to get back in the pool again. More great conversations for season number 3. BYU running back Hinckley Rapati will talk about his tear-filled journey to BYU. Former BYU tight end Chad Lewis, he's going to reflect back on that special 1996 BYU football season. And BYU basketball players Richie Saunders and Fuseni Traore discuss their unique relationship. It started way before they got to BYU. Please subscribe and listen to Deep Blue with Jason Shepard wherever you get podcasts, or check it out on the BYU Radio app. Welcome back to BYU Radio Big Stories episode. Maddie McLaughlin will motivate you. Maddie's burgeoning athletic career halted during her freshman year in high school.
I'd always been a super healthy kid and tremendously active. I just loved using my body, and I loved being outside, and I loved playing sports of all shapes and sizes.
But right after the volleyball season, and just as basketball season was ramping up, Maddie got really sick.
I would just lie in bed pretty much the entire day because I couldn't manage much more than that. It was really hard for me to walk up a flight of stairs. I would have to sit while I was taking showers. I was miserable every day, in pain, mentally, physically, emotionally, and it felt like that can't be my future. I can't keep doing this for decades.
After suffering for around 2 years, Maddie found out she had Lyme disease.
I ended up going towards more alternative medicine.
Vitamin C infusions and other sort of alternative treatments. Ozone treatments, other things.
Mary McLaughlin, Maddie's mom, also helped with a very strict diet. The summer before her senior year of high school, Maddie was almost back to normal physically. And that's when she emailed her volleyball coach telling her she was back.
The good news is I grew. I'm 6'2" now. I think I was 5'10" or 5'11" when I had checked out. And she's like, great, come to tryouts. It was really disorienting because I was used to being the fittest person in the gym and the fastest, and I could jump well. And suddenly I was, the last person to finish on the wind sprints. And so that was hard mentally because there was a lot of, I think, doubt for me, can I actually return to my former athletic self?
Maddie was also slowed down by the fact that she had only played about 4 months of high school volleyball before she got sick.
There was so much that I didn't know, and so I had to get over myself in a hurry. I think that gave me a gift, though, because I feel really comfortable asking questions and asking for help, and it doesn't matter the age of the person. It's like, hey, if you know it and you can help me, fantastic. That's all that matters.
Did it come back, even though the conditioning probably wasn't there, but did she come back pretty quickly since she was so talented?
She did, which was astonishing.
Maddie's dad, Peter McLaughlin.
And the team had their best season in, I don't know how long, over 10 years.
Definitely, I improved a lot. The potential for improvement is greater, of course, as you're a beginner. But yeah, still, by the end of it, I was so focused on how do I get myself recruited? How do I play at the next level?
Maddie sent emails to dozens of coaches and college volleyball programs, asking them to check out video proof of what she could do on the court.
And a lot of people said, yeah, thanks, but no thanks, best of luck. I got a ton of no's. And And so finally I got one yes, which was really all I needed. I just needed the one. And so, yeah, the head coach at SUNY Geneseo said, hey, we're actually looking for an outside hitter. And so I got really lucky that I got a place on that roster.
She also joined the university's track team.
Like at the time, I didn't know which sport I wanted to play pro. Like I just knew I wanted to play and compete at the highest levels. Maybe I could have used a few extra reps in the off season instead of doing the pentathlon.
While playing for the Knights volleyball team, Maddie was dreaming about leveling up. State University of New York Geneseo is a Division III program, and she wanted to play in the top NCAA division. Her mom and brother Charlie backed her aspirations.
And so I finally walked into my head coach's office and I just burst into tears because, it was very overwhelming. But I told her what I wanted to do and she was super supportive of me. And then I just went outside, sat under a tree and cried because, I had this feeling of like, what have I just done? Like, how amazing that I was able to play in college, and did I just blow that up?
She started doing her research on Division I college volleyball programs. Maddie didn't think she could play for one of the top 50 teams and decided to focus on the next tier down. Charlie wasn't having it.
And he said, hang on. If Texas said, hey, we really want you on our roster, would you say no? And I was like, well, obviously not, Charlie. You're just being ridiculous. He's like, well, why won't you send an email then? And it sounds really simple, but his logic kind of threw me. And so I realized he was right. And he was saying, what is the absolute worst that can happen? They say no, or they don't respond to your email. That's literally the worst thing that can possibly happen in this scenario. And so I said, okay, fine.
So she sent out, 25 to 50 emails to all the coaches of these different places. And lo and behold, ASU wrote back, Penn State wrote back.
Stanford had always been the dream school because my mom had been there.
Stanford wrote back and said, no, thank you.
Kevin Hambley, the head coach, I think forgot that he had responded to my email. He said, hey, Maddie, thanks for reaching out. At this point, we're not recruiting or whatever. A nice way to let me down easy. And then a day later, I got another email saying, hey, Maddie, actually, yep, we don't need you here. So it kind of became a joke in my family that Kevin just wanted to keep rejecting me.
Two schools showed a lot of interest in Maddie: Creighton and Arizona State.
And when she went out there, she was thinking, I don't want to go to Arizona State. She honestly didn't. Yeah. That was not her first choice. She thought, I'll get some practice at Arizona State, interviewing and meeting the team and everything else. And then from there, she was going to fly to Creighton. And she thought that's where she was going to be.
I got to ASU thinking it was just some big party school. I'm like, whatever, it's on the way to Creighton, I guess, whatever. But I went out there and just completely fell in love with it. The place, the people, the environment, everything about it. It was surprising, but I completely fell in love with it.
And after the first, 24 hours, she said, I'm home. This is my home. I'm coming here. This is where I want to be. And we're like, well, you haven't gone to Creighton yet. She said, I don't care.
Arizona State also happened to be her father's alma mater. Pete's dad, a former professional baseball player and coach, also used to live in the area.
It feels like things are being divinely guided. And I know that there's no way I can prove this, but I have this feeling that my dad is kind of directing things from the other side. And Maddie has a special connection to him. At Arizona State, she wore number 25, and that's the number my dad wore all through his career. So I just feel like that, the hand of God or divine providence is somehow involved in all of this because things are just too miraculous.
Once Maddie made it to Tempe, she didn't take the Pac-12 or even the Sun Devils volleyball team by storm.
I was playing at first, and then I was being used as a blocking sub for a while. Then I ended up redshirting the next year. So it was kind of all over the place. And then I had an extra year because of COVID.
That extra year gave Maddie new volleyball life.
She is going to give 100% of what she has in every single thing that she does.
This is J.J. Van Niel, the Sun Devils volleyball coach. He was hired to take over the ASU volleyball program in 2023, Maddie's final season. J.J. was in need of middle blockers after failing to recruit any during the winter transfer portal window.
And the thought of going into season with just two middles was frightening. And so I had watched her in the weight room. She's very athletic. I think when we tested, she did like 18 chin-ups in a row. Good squatter, good jumper. And one of the things that middles have to do is they got to be able to work their butt off over and over and over again. They don't get a lot of credit. And I was like, man, that's like right up Maddie's alley. And then I went with my gut and I just go, I'm pretty sure we got to make this move.
It was a spring practice and he came up to me and he said, Maddie, have you ever played middle? was like, no. And, you know, I barely played as it is, but certainly not middle.
And if it'd be okay with you, I think I said, can we just go for 1 week and then I'll check back in with you? And if you're just like, no, then hey, I'll move you back and you'll compete at the pin and no harm, no foul. And she goes, look, if you think that's where you need me, then I'm in. And she loved it.
When JJ moved her into the middle position, it was like almost like a light went off.
This is Maddie's former ASU teammate, Geli Cyr.
You could just see how athletic she really is and like what she brought to the table.
And the rest is history.
During that last season, Maddie started every game but one.
We were playing Colorado. It's close to the end of the match. Overpass kind of thing happens. Their kid, I don't know what happened. They get tangled up and she goes down and she's on the ground a long time. I went back in the training room after and was chatting with her. And I mean, she was pretty shaken up and her ankle was not looking great. I just remember saying, listen, this is not about you getting back for Sunday's match or next week's match. We're going to take our time. And she's like, I'll be back for next weekend. The next day, it's Saturday morning. And she's on the sideline of our practice doing mini hops because she's just like, listen, I got to get blood in there. I got to get the swelling down, but I'm going to get as much blood flowing in there and I'm going to beat this thing. And so she didn't play that Sunday, but she played the next Friday's match. I mean, that's Maddie, you know.
The amount that she brought together our team and just was that natural leader. Like she's the type, like if we're at the airport and we're all on our phones, she'll be like, all right, phones down, like let's play a game. Her transformation here at ASU has been something that's been so cool to watch.
Did you ever expect her to be playing professional volleyball?
Oh no, we always knew. She was always gonna do that. Yeah. There was no way she was going to leave volleyball. No way.
Why do you say that?
If you tried to kick her out, she loves it. Like she loves it, and Maddie is so stubborn. In a great way. She is the most stubborn person ever. Like she was determined to make me her friend, and we became really, really good friends afterwards after we didn't talk for 2 years. Yeah, no doubt in my mind that she was going to play pro.
Her first professional sports gig, playing for a volleyball club on the island of Puerto Rico.
They ended up going in a different direction, but then another team picked me up, and then the team kind of dissolved. A new coach came in, immediately let me go too, and so I flew back to the U.S., and then I sort of thought that would be it.
Maddie stayed with her parents in Tampa, just down the road from the Orlando Valkyries.
My coach, JJ Van Niel, at ASU, he had a connection with the head coach here, and so it just worked out perfectly.
Orlando coach Amy Pauly had a middle blocker go down with an injury early in the season.
One of the first things JJ said to me was, it doesn't matter about her volleyball skill. She's going to be one of the favorite people around.
Maddie signed on to the Valkyries practice squad.
The practice squad players had to just come from NCAA.
I actually got really lucky that they didn't count my, Puerto Rican stint as experience. So that was really fortunate.
The initial conversations were, you're not going to play because your role is to be a great practice player, be a side two, help us scout, help us kind of get better at the things that we need to. But we're also going to try to train you and help you get ready for next season so that you can make an active roster.
So I'm kind of in every drill, doing a whole lot, which is great for me because I get to really develop and train a ton without having to worry about, breaking down physically or needing to be ready to go for game day or whatever.
She's a fighter, and she gives it to me in practice.
Our head coach came up to me in the airport one day and she said, hey, this is going to be your new roommate.
This is Carly Graham, Maddie's former teammate in Orlando.
It was her first day. I'm like, I don't know you, you don't know me, let's go walk and talk. And that's exactly what we did. And I shared my story with her because she was asking me all these questions, and I'm like, okay, now it's your turn. And so then I started flooding her with the questions, and she told me her story, and I was just like, my jaw was on the ground. I was so in awe of her story, and it's just so crazy to think that she is here playing professional volleyball when so many people told her that was probably not possible.
What's it like being a professional volleyball player?
I mean, personally, I still kind of get butterflies every time I hear somebody say that to me because there was a long time in my life that I didn't think that would be possible. And so just hearing the word professional in front of it is just thrilling to me.
After her stint in Orlando, Maddie signed on to play with the pro team in Spain. Every person I interviewed was in awe of Maddie's perseverance. I'm one of them. That's why I wanted to tell her story. But Maddie didn't think of herself as an inspirational icon at first.
I dealt with a lot of anger right after my illness because I felt like, why me? I kept getting struck with that feeling of everybody else got to have the traditional high school and athletic experience.
But a story Maddie's mom told me encapsulates how far Maddie has come. In her one and only season as a high school track athlete, Maddie muffed it while running the 200-meter race in her first meet.
She's running, and then it's like her legs just give out. And she just absolutely face plants onto the track.
And it was one of those things where you heard like the entire crowd just go, oh! And so I just stood back up and ran across the finish line dead last, and then tried to get out of that track meet as soon as possible.
That may have been Maddie's most important life lesson.
I think as I've gotten older, I've realized it is a marathon. It's not a sprint, you know? Ironically enough, because I was running a 200, so it was a sprint. But I think it experiences like that taught me that it really boiled down to like, okay, what are you going to do tomorrow, right? Like you stand back up, dust yourself off, and you keep going, you know? And it's in the moments where you keep going as opposed to just throwing in the towel. Like that, those moments accumulate, and that I think is what makes a great career.
Maddie McLaughlin Will Motivate You was produced and written by Whitney Sheffield and Cleon Wall. Music and post-production by Finn Morrison. Make sure you watch BYUTV's Big Stories by logging on to BYUSN.com. Big Stories is a production of BYU Radio. Hey everyone, this is Cleon Wall. We hope you are enjoying this season of Big Stories. We love bringing you these stories that inspire and can also humble you. Now, if you are looking for another podcast which also has great stories and talks about all things BYU women's sports, then make sure you check out the Her Why podcast. It's hosted by Lauren McLean. You'll hear from current coaches like Jen Rockwood and Heather Olmstead, and athletes like BYU basketball's Amari Whiting and Cougar soccer star Ellie Walbrook. You'll also hear from legends like Olympic runner Courtney Wayment and Utah Royals forward Brecken Mozingo. So make sure you subscribe to Her Why wherever you find podcasts or on the BYU Radio app.